We're going to continue with the next panel. One of the great revolutions this year has been wearable technology. I'm going to move to English because both our presenters speak English, so we'll have a minute to hear them.
I think you're first. We're going to listen to you for 20 minutes, and then Sony.
All right. I guess I'm waiting for my slides to come up.
Por cierto, si alguien tiene preguntas,
if anyone have questions, my Twitter is Pedro Boleo. I'll be receiving questions here so I can ask them questions later.
Okay, so I'm Francoise Baldassari. I'm an engineer for Pebble. Pebble makes the Pebble smartwatch and the Pebble Steel, which you can see up there. They are smartphone accessories that you can use to get your notifications, collect data about yourself. There's a few sensors in there. And control your music, as well as install applications, such as games. We are today the only open hackable platform that is wearable. And yeah, and I've been working there for a couple of years now. So Eric likes to say that big things have small beginnings. For Pebble, the beginnings was Eric being in the Netherlands for his last year of study at university. Eric is a systems engineer. He went to University of Waterloo. And when he moved to the Netherlands, he realized that he had a serious disadvantage over his comrades. He is unable to read his text messages on his bike. So all of these guys, they bike everywhere. They live on their bikes. They do their makeup on their bikes. They eat on their bikes. They text on their bikes. And Eric missed everything because he couldn't do any of that. And he didn't really set out to achieve everything that I talked about earlier. He only wanted to be able to read his text messages without breaking a bone. Eric is an engineer, so he did what engineers do. He built it. And I think this is maybe the most important part of this talk, which is that if there's something you want to do, if you have an itch to scratch, this is what we say in engineering. Engineers scratch their itches. Just go ahead and do it. You know, 10 years ago, you couldn't actually do that. Most of the technologies were very archaic, very difficult to work with. You needed to know assembly. You needed advanced engineering knowledge. You needed access to very expensive hardware. Most development boards were out of reach for the average person. But today, that has changed. Today, you can go and spend $35 and get pretty much what used to be considered the state-of-the-art in computing. So I like to show this guy. I bought him a couple weeks ago. It's called a Spark device, Spark Core. $35, you get a 32-bit microcontroller, you get Wi-Fi, and you can actually program it using very high-level APIs. You can give this to your kid, and they can start building hardware. It's never been this easy to build, and I would encourage all of you guys to get something like this, start hacking, and scratch those itches, make those projects possible. So Eric went through a few prototypes. He used something called an Arduino, which maybe some of you know. Arduino is maybe the first of those open source hardware projects. And because he went to University of Waterloo, he built it for BlackBerry, which is kind of the big tech company over there. And he started getting his text messages on his wrist. Now, it wasn't very glamorous. It didn't do very much. But it was good enough that he could show it to someone. And so what he said is that you should build something because evidence is the key factor in building a business. You need to show that you can actually make it. So after a few prototypes, he realized that he needed to get some market validation. And again, people ask me, OK, you have a prototype. How do you go from there to actually building a company? And the answer he tells people is you just do it. He built a website, collected some money from friends and family, and put together a product. So this is our first product. It's called the Impulse. Nobody's ever heard of it. It released in 2010, which was perfect timing for BlackBerry to hit the beginning of the end of BlackBerry. Unfortunately, it was only BlackBerry compatible. And it got you your text messages. And although it wasn't a resounding success, it certainly didn't reach the masses. Nobody's heard of it. It was invaluable in building Pebble. The Impulse allowed us to build experience. As an aside, when we shipped Pebble, the company was 2 full-time employees, a couple buddies who worked on the weekends, and a bunch of interns who did it for a good review on their internship. So it doesn't take many people, it doesn't take much know-how. It really just takes going to the lab and doing it. There was no Kickstarter, there was nothing like that. There was just a website, getimpulse.com, and you just went there and you bought an impulse, and a few people did. And we started seeing some incredible things. For example, we released an SDK, and some people started building apps. There was a guy who, for a month, built 1 app every day and released it. There was a community that started building. People built websites to talk about Impulse. The BlackBerry crowd, some of them loved their Impulse. And we started realizing that although we hadn't gotten everything right, we had hit a nerve. We had found something. And so looking back at it, I think it's interesting to talk about the lessons learned there, which is what we did right is we shipped something, we got it in front of people, and we gave them the ability to customize it and to program for it, and we went very quickly to market. Now, there are also things that we very quickly found out we had done wrong. For example, we had been really conscious of building a product that we could scale very quickly. We were so worried about making it low cost, easy to manufacture, that we ended up solving problems that we never actually faced. So we developed our own Bluetooth stack. We built a lot of custom parts, and those ended up costing us huge amounts of time and money, but didn't really translate into any benefits to us. So we came up with this principle for ourselves, which was build the simplest thing that may possibly work. Don't worry about scaling. Don't optimize preemptively. This preemptive optimization actually often is the single biggest mistake a new hardware guy can make. So we had kind of stumbled upon this new field, wearable electronics. And I underlined wearable because we didn't really know what it meant to be wearable. And it turns out that there are a lot of really fundamental implications to it. The first one is that because it's a new technology doesn't mean that you should expect new behaviors. So if you're trying to replace a watch, you need to at least be as good as a watch. You can't be a really terrible watch that also has, a few cool apps. And that's what the Impulse did really wrong. The screen that we chose was an OLED display. OLED is nice. It has vibrant colors. All of you guys have OLED displays in your pocket. Most cell phones use those. But the problem is the trade-off was power consumption. So the Impulse had about a day of battery life, and that was with the screen shutting off all the time, which means that if you wanted to see the time on your wrist, you needed to press a button, and you got 10 seconds of seeing the time, and then your watch was black, which was kind of a problem. It really doesn't look good when you have a dead screen on your wrist. So that was the first thing. The second thing is, for it to be wearable, you really want it to be waterproof. The Impulse wasn't. So people couldn't wear it in the shower, people couldn't wear it while running or sweating or things like that. And because we wanted it to be always on, always collecting data, that kind of defeated the purpose. And the last thing is it had to be attractive. People need to want to wear it. If it looks very different from what people have today, it's stigmatizing, and people decide not to wear it, not because they don't like it, but because other people look at them and say, this thing is weird. So those were the lessons learned. So we had all of these great lessons that we had learned, and we were really excited to come up with a new product and put together something else. But unfortunately, at that point, we had no money, and every time we went to a traditional funding source, they told us, hardware is hard. It says it in the name, hardware. And so nobody wanted to give us money. Thankfully, I think at that time was when Kickstarter was really growing in popularity, and so we decided to go for it. We put together a Kickstarter video. We built, we built model of our products, and we put it up online. And the response was overwhelming. The Kickstarter community really gave us, well, first the money to make our ideas come to life, but also they gave us a community upon which we could build and gave us kind of a group of people that would evangelize for us. It was a marathon putting it together. There were many moments where we thought we may not be able to deliver, but we to look back at it as the single most biggest defining moment for us. We managed to raise $10 million from a community of our customers, better than customers, early adopters, people that are excited about technology. When people ask me from Europe or elsewhere, how do you build a hardware company or even a startup outside of Silicon Valley? Oftentimes I point to Kickstarter and I tell them, more and more, it's not relevant where you are. Those people, those guys, those Kickstarter customers that gave us $10 million, they were from all over the world. They weren't from Silicon Valley. I mean, a fair amount of them were, but not a majority by any means. And if you can, thanks to this new platform, Kickstarter, Indiegogo, and there are many more actually, you can just reach your customers, raise money from the crowd, and you can bypass, at least at the beginning, the traditional funding sources. And it's a virtuous cycle, because once you reach $10 million in funding, you have 68,000 people giving you money, then the founders, the venture capitalists, they come to you. There's actually nowadays, if we were to do it again, I'm not entirely sure Kickstarter would be the right platform for us, but if you look, there's a ton of alternatives. There's a company called Lockitron. They built a smart lock that you put on your door, and they actually built their own funding platform. It's all open source. You can grab it, you put it on your website, and you basically have a roll your own Kickstarter. You can roll your own Kickstarter. There's a company called Dragon Innovation. They combine manufacturing and crowdfunding, and they've helped launch Tesla and countless others. So if you're struggling to raise funding, really the solution is appeal to your customers, use these platforms. If we had had that during the Impulse Day, it would have probably be a totally different ballgame. After a couple of months of really hard work, we put together the Pebble. So this is the iFixit teardown of it. I like to show it because people see the watch and they see the functionality, but it's useful to see what it actually is. It's a really tiny board and with a few really tiny chips, an e-paper display, and that's about it. And this watch is, in computing power, about the equivalent of the original Macintosh, which when you think about it, is mind-boggling. I mean, everybody wearing a Pebble has a 128K Apple Macintosh on their wrists, more or less. If you think about the first spreadsheet software was built on that platform. Some of the first graphics, Paint-like software was also built on the original Macintosh. What can Pebble enable? That's the question I'm asking. And a lot of people came to answer that question. It turns out that the response from the community is and has been overwhelming. We shipped a product that didn't do nearly half of all the things we wanted it to do. It was unpolished, there was no app store, it's not localized, it doesn't even we don't even have drivers for all of the sensors that are in the watch. We have a magnetometer, which today we don't use. We hope to use it someday. And when people ask us why we did that, why we released an unfinished product, I like to quote Reid Hoffman, who said that if the first product that you ship, if the first version of your product is not something you're ashamed of, you waited way too long. So it's more important to put together a very solid upgrade process, and that's something that we poured enormous amount of time in. We made sure that we could update the Pebble really easily. If you have an easy way to upgrade the software, and you educate your customers about the fact that it gets better, it's going to keep improving, and you capture data about how they actually use it, you can continuously improve your product. You can ship something that doesn't do everything you want it to do, because you know that over 6 or 10 months, you will actually get there. The other part is that your customers will actually not only forgive you for shipping a product that doesn't do everything yet, but they'll actually help you. So we had people build an app store. Some guy made a website where you can drag and drop some images and make your own Pebble watch faces. Some Russian guys actually built a website where they go and edit the binaries of the firmware to add Russian language support and Chinese language support. We didn't have all the resources to do that, but our community, which is so incredible, went ahead and built it for us. And in the process, they gave us invaluable insight into how people want to actually use these things. So to thank them, we organized a party a year after the Kickstarter. A lot of people showed up. We got awesome feedback. And I would say that the Pebble community is by far the biggest resource that we have, the greatest source of wealth for Pebble. We have countless of people building apps, getting each other excited and evangelizing for us, and that's been really a blessing for us. So recently, we actually took it upon ourselves to build our own app store, and I think that's been kind of the next step for Pebble, an obvious next step for a while. In order to really foster that community, you have to give them ways to express themselves. So we built an app store, we built a new UI around it, we polished our SDK a lot, built actually a cloud IDE, so people can go online and there's a live text editor in the browser that you can use and directly download to your Pebble. You don't need to install anything, you don't need to have a text editor or have any toolchain installed on your laptop. You can just go cloudpebble.com and write a Pebble app, put it on the App Store, it's become seamless. We've built a lot of these tools, and we've shifted our focus kind of from the hardware to all of this software that has allowed us to empower our user base. Making sure that all of these developers build apps for Pebble is how we guarantee the future of Pebble. These applications and all of this investment that people are putting into our company give us a lot of leverage and give us a lot of staying power, because once people start building businesses around our business, we have a lot more inertia. Lastly, we started thinking a little bit about different form factors, maybe trying to reach other markets, and we made the Pebble Steel, which I'm wearing today. Feel free to come and ask me if you want to see it. It's a glass and metal watch, and it's targeted at slightly dressier customers. The response has also been overwhelming, and it's led us to think about what other types of Pebble we could ship, what type of customization people are looking for, and how are we going to make sure that over and over again we can convince people to not just buy a Pebble, but also wear a Pebble. That's it for me.
Yeah, thank you.